Well, I've picked up another book that was quite interesting and is quite interesting called Silence as Yoga by Swami Paramananda. And a nice little writing here on page 17. He says, we must have certain fundamental values before we can make any headway with our spiritual life. If our mind is filled with noble thoughts, we do not find ourselves lonely and unprotected at any time. The average person is lonely whenever there is no one to entertain him or to talk with him. But a person who has entered into his spiritual depth, even in a small measure, is very glad to find an opportunity when he can be alone, communing with his own inner self. We should all learn to be alone with ourselves. People imagine that they cannot be happy unless they are constantly in the company of others. Then again, some think that they must get away from everything and everybody in order to have peace of mind. However, we are never alone, even though we may enter a mountain cave, if we are tormented by our own ignorance and our own selfishness. That's a very interesting thing. One of the things that keep us, the two things that keep us from being comfortable alone, is this our own inner ignorance and selfishness. You know, and there's a truth to this. So we can't be at peace with ourselves in those conditions, because our nature, according to the sages, is pure love, right? Unselfishness and pure wisdom, a knowing, right? And so if you have not kept your mind in order with your nature, meaning making it obedient to unselfishness, and you know, not letting it be tormented by ignorance, then loneliness is not an issue for you. You may wonder what I mean by silence, if it is not getting away from the crowd, if it is not breaking away from the noisy part of life. It does not mean that. It requires something more than running away from people. You may enter the forest's untraveled depths, and yet you may find no quiet if your own mind is noisy, or if your own attitude is distracted, or if you have not harmony within your own self. These are the things which we have to cultivate. It is better for us to cultivate them before we fall into the entanglement of life, just being overwhelmed with the way life is. And so these three things here that you have to pay attention to in yourself. You know, that your mind not be noisy. You know, often, I guess Descartes said, I think, therefore I am. Fundamental mistake. I am, therefore I think, you know. But according to Eckhart Tolle, we should use our mind when we need to use our mind. When the mind is not necessary, it should be silent. It should be quiet. But rather, we keep that thing running and churning almost 24/7. You know, unless we manage to fall asleep and it quiets down and then into a dream it goes, right? So we have to quiet our own mind. We have to learn to appreciate that inner silence. You have to have your attitude not be one of constant distraction. You know, I've noticed some people, when you're sitting there talking to them these days, they can't keep their eyes on you. They're glancing and watching everything happening around them. They're constantly distracted by things. And we have to learn to discipline ourselves to be able to focus, right? To be able to hold a single thought in our mind, or at least to be able to carry on a single conversation without having to pay attention and note everything else in the room that moves. And having a harmony within your own self, right? A harmony within, meaning that you are able to be silent in the present moment by yourself without the mind wandering restlessly, trying to think of things you need or want or crave or would like to have, but rather to be present with an awareness of being, to again touch the amazement of being alive. And so this is how we find that inner silence, that inner peace, right? That these are the virtues that we need before we can really step into spiritual practice. This ability to control ourselves, and the ability to concentrate, to be focused, and by building and maintaining an inner harmony where our words are our own, our yeses are yes, and our nos are nos. So, a great book, if you want to step into some practice. Silence as yoga.